Every December, women tell me the same thing. I thought I'd be further along by now. If that's hitting somewhere tender, stay with me. Because this time of year brings a very specific kind of pressure, and it's not just all in your head. There's this giant cultural push towards being more and doing more. Finish the year strong, make it count, wrap up loose ends, transform yourself before January hits. And if you're listening right now thinking, well, I should have accomplished more. I didn't do enough. I'm behind. Everyone else is finishing strong and I'm just tired. That's not a character flaw. That's end of year burnout. By the time November and December roll around, most women are running on fumes. You've spent 11 months making decisions, holding emotional weight for your family, your work, your relationships, your kids, and then the holidays show up and pile on even more expectations on top. And here's the thing I want you to hear. This pattern is seasonal, not personal. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling tapped out right now. Your body isn't malfunctioning. It's showing you its limits. So today we're going to talk about what it looks like to actually protect your peace during this season, not through massive last minute goals, not through pushing harder or reinventing yourself before January 1st, but through micro movements, tiny doable shifts that help you breathe again, reconnect with yourself, and stay steady without spiraling into that all or nothing yuckiness that we know we can do. And because burnout doesn't just show up in your motivation, it shows up in your eating patterns too. The way you cope with pressure is often the same way you cope with food. So I'm going to walk you through how to understand your eating style and how to use it as insight, not judgment, with my eating personality quiz. So take a breath. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need a little space, and that's what this episode is here for.
Welcome to Embodied Love, where we're rewriting the rules around food, body image, and self-acceptance. I'm Dr. Meredith McKenzie, therapist, coach, and your guide to a life free from diet culture and food guilt. If you ever felt stuck in the cycle of binging, restricting, or struggling to feel at home in your body, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll explore emotional eating, body image, and joyful movement through solo episodes, expert interviews, and real-life coaching sessions. Because your body is not the problem. This is your space to learn, heal, and finally break free, and to discover what it means to love the body you're in.
So this was the loop that I was actually in. I'll be honest, it made me want to do this episode, but I was in this loop 2 weeks ago. And it really took me a moment to step back and look at what was going on for me, because typically, and maybe you can relate to this, I am a very achievement oriented person. Like, I have a long to-do list, but I'm confident that I can accomplish it. And I always set these high expectations for myself. My husband actually jokes of if I have free time, I must fill it with something. Is that a sustainable thing? Not always, but I've worked really hard at being able to slow down, notice, and not bite off more than I can chew. But it still throws me for a loop when I end up feeling burnout, because it just feels so opposite to what I typically experience. So what could that look like for you emotionally if that's happening for you? Maybe it's feeling behind, feeling like you thought you were going to be somewhere and you're not, feeling that sense of shame, noticing that everybody else around you is talking about all these goals and things that they're achieving, and you just feel like you're not measuring up, or being disappointed in yourself because you did have these high expectations of yourself, but you're not where you thought you would be. You might notice that you're comparing yourself more to what you'd imagined that you would achieve 12 months ago. We often go into the new year, even if we are trying to practice not having hard set resolutions, we go in seeing this new year as this blank slate opportunity to achieve, and all these things are going to be different. And unfortunately, time gets away from us. There are a whole bunch of psychological kind of concepts and theories that kind of go into this, but oftentimes we do have higher expectations for what we can accomplish in a set amount of time than is really possible. We do need to give ourselves more buffer space, and life happens, right? There's going to be things that are going to derail us or cause some buffer, need for buffer space, because kids get sick, you get sick, you're waiting on something and you're not able to accomplish it in the kind of straightforward way that you had hoped. And you might find that you're starting to put pressure on yourself to make December count. Like, this is the time. I have to do this. It's all or nothing until now. And you might suddenly feel that pull to fix everything in January. So it can be this kind of like back and forth between either I do it all now because I need to finish the year strong, or screw it, I can't. I'm going to give up. I'm going to sink in. And that can be a very depressing, disconnected feeling. I'll just save it till January and then I'll go gung ho. And anytime I hear anybody talk about that pendulum swing, that all or nothing, I'm all in or I'm all out, the almost like dissociation from the feelings of shame of like, oh, I messed up again. I can't even bother to be near this feeling. That is, to me, a very clear sign of burnout and a very like challenging situation that can really affect your relationship with food in your body. So what does this look like in your body? Fatigue, right? And fatigue is such a difficult thing to describe. It could be physical fatigue where you're very tired. It could be that sense of, for me, it's like a lack of energy where normally I'm used to like really wanting and pursuing and getting excited about things. And I notice it of like, I put my kids to bed and I'm like, I just don't want to do anything right now. I can't even imagine doing anything for myself. That's the kind of fatigue I experience. Maybe you're more irritable, more snappy. You notice that there's something kind of like prickly just beneath the surface. You feel a sense of sensory overload. You know, the kids are loud and you're just a little more brittle. And maybe you also experience it as numbness. So while you're feeling overloaded, you push away from that feeling and you're not as connected with your body. You can find yourself running on autopilot and disconnecting from your hunger cues. So you're going about your day, you're not planning the same way. So the meal planning that you were doing previously, or recognizing that you're going to have a rough, difficult couple of days, so you're pre-planning for that, that just goes out the window. You notice that you're, relying more on takeout, easy meals. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things, but you know that it's not the way you thrive. And you're also noticing that you're really emotionally shutting down in the evenings. Maybe that's like how I was just describing myself of like, I just can't do anything. And you find yourself vegging out in front of the television more. You're maybe not doing the chores that you would typically do in the evening. You're letting things lapse. Like, I don't know, do you have bills that you need to pay, or taxes are trying to get tied up, or any of the kind of things that the businessy things that you have to do outside of your work hours. And you're just not emotionally there. And that is also a really tricky time where people start to say, I've got all these urges that I just want to emotionally eat. Why does this happen? And why can I speak to it, one, from my own experience, and then also I'm pretty sure you're experiencing it too at some point. It's because we have this sense of cognitive depletion from 11 months of emotional labor, the caregiving, the decision-making that we have to do. And because we really set ourselves up in the way we think about the 12 months of the year, that there's something magical, right? There's realistically, when we think about it, there's nothing different from yesterday to today. So, but we make it that there's something different, right? January is no different than March. Weather, yes. But in terms of like productivity and what we can or should achieve in that time. But we set ourselves up to believe that by the end of the year, that should be some magical time where we can check a box off and feel like we've accomplished something. We have this like really culturally a obsession with productivity and New Year reinvention, that is going to be that date that things just change. And you might have feel this way, because I know that I have in the past, that you have this internalized belief that your worth is tied to your achievement. That personally was something that I was like, well, no one can ever take this away from me. I am very proud with how well I achieve. I have lots to show for it. And I think especially if you struggle with your body and you've maybe given up the diet culture kind of beliefs and you're trying to like push that away from yourself, you might double down on some of that achievement oriented self-identity. Because I can say, okay, well, I don't want to be like living to this ideal of this body type. However, I know that I can get a PhD. I know that I can build a business. I know I can do all these things. And then those will be my check marks, my gold stars, even if I'm not meeting society's expectations for how I should look. So you end up believing that if you're not achieving those things, that there's something wrong with you. So how are we going to end this? Because if you're anything like me, or if you're feeling any of this, it's not something that you want to continue. And I think it's also something important to pay attention to, that it's happening, that it could happen again. So let's think about our bandwidth. It's being low. We don't have the capacity. Like, let's recognize that that's not a failing, but it is a reality, right? Your brain is trying to conserve its energy. It's trying to recover, and it's needing you to demand less of it. And we have a few options, because if we continue this way, a lot of us are going to freeze. We're going to shut down, because it makes doing anything else feel absolutely impossible. And when we get to that point, then we're not able to care for ourselves in the way that we know would be the best for us. So you recognize that you're stress eating, or maybe you're grazing more, or you're overeating in the evening, because that really is your brain's attempt to try to soften some of that exhaustion and create a sense of relief. Even if it is not, the most emotionally healthy, it is something that your body's trying to do to help you cope in that situation. So think about some of these things for yourself and just identify, are they happening for you? It could be really amplified at this time. Skipping meals, emotional eating, feeling chaotic with food at night, maybe overcompensating with food rules. So maybe instead of emotionally eating, you're really, digging down on those rules and you're not letting go. You're kind of white knuckling it. And feeling as though your eating is all or nothing. Again, I want to remind you that if you eat in this way, or if this is the way you're coping, these are not character flaws. It is your nervous system reacting to that chronic sense of pressure that you've been feeling. I also think it is so powerful to recognize the patterns that often will reoccur, because if you know that they're coming, you can kind of plan for them. It doesn't mean that you accept them to be true, but you know that your mind is likely going to get into that headspace at some point. So if you know that you are somebody that really values finishing strong and wrapping up, then that is going to be something that is going to pressure you, even if you try to talk to yourself and say, hey, we don't need to do this, right? That's why you might be finding that you have all these last minute big goals, and you feel that burnout, you feel that shame, you feel that self-criticism when you're not getting there. And you find that you have this internal conversation with yourself of like, well, if I can't finish strong now, I need to make up for it at some point. It has to be January then. And you set that expectation for yourself. But what do we know to be true, and how is this going to play out? Most likely, you're going to have that January hype. You're going to be riding on the coattails of everybody else's excitement and motivation, and it does feel really supportive. And I will say, this is why I created my anti-diet holiday club, because I know that the support is really necessary and helpful for so many people. And I hope if you are in the club listening to this right now, that you are experiencing that as well. Being, side by side with other people, that's really helpful. Not so helpful though when it is pushing you to do things that are like aligned with diet culture. Anyways, that happens. February, at some point, you're most likely going to crash. Maybe if you're lucky, March. And immediately after that, you are hit with guilt. It is this cycle that just continues every year for so many of us. And if we're not recognizing that that is most likely going to happen, maybe you're promising yourself, well, that won't be me this time. I'm going to work so much harder at it. Why set yourself up for that additional pressure? Because it is a very normative thing to push yourself to the point of deprivation, and then your body wants to rebound in some way. And so maybe you'll be even harder on yourself then if you thought that this time should have been different. And as much as you might try to push away from diet culture, right? You've been listening to this podcast and you're saying, Meredith's got something going on here. We are not going to, buy into diet culture in the new year. It is very easy with that imaginary, starting date of January 1st to set up this fantasy of, this is a new year, this is a new me, and I get a fresh start. So I just want you to be aware as you go into this kind of way of thinking of how you want to support yourself through the sense of burnout, so that you're not setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations, and that you recognize when these different aspects of the burnout and the guilt and then the kind of reemergence in this new version of yourself start to come into play. Because it's probably going to happen. And I don't want you to be hard on yourself when that does happen, because really that's not fair to you at all. So when I say micro movements, what am I meaning? I'm thinking about the smallest, like teeny tiniest doable steps that protect your nervous system's capacity. These are not the things that we would typically see on somebody's resolution list, because those are often like very large, big goals. If you are familiar at all with the idea of SMART goals, you might be aware that, having small attainable goals is something that makes you more successful. But I'm even thinking smaller than that, like micro, micro, micro. This is like making a grocery shopping list before you go to the store. This is, I'm going to, set my timer for 10 minutes so that I can take some time to check in with myself every day. These are like the tiniest, tiniest micro things that maybe in the moment seem completely insignificant, but really they do have a big impact. These are movements that almost require no motivation to complete. The more you can outsource this to like pre-planning or any kind of automation where you're using a timer on your phone, or you just set up kind of a system for yourself of sitting down and doing the grocery list, that is where you're going to find the most success with it. And you don't have to, in the moment, try to like muster up any kind of emotional motivation. They're really gentle shifts that are aimed at rebuilding trust with your body as well, so that you're able to start bringing your body back online so that it can give you the information that you need to have in order to be making some of these decisions. I will go into some examples for this season. So we're talking about November, December, even going into January. What does this look like? I want to, before I even jump into any of this, I want to be very aware that it is so easy for diet culture to co-opt some things that are genuinely self-care activities. And I guess be of two minds with this, that if you notice that your food police voice is kind of coming up and going, oh, that sounds like diet behavior, for you, be mindful of that. For other people, it's going to be like, oh, actually, yes, that does feel like a moment of self-care for myself. So just keep that in mind. Examples: drinking water before your first coffee. Maybe what that looks like as a micro movement for you is you get 2 cups out of the cupboard. You get one for coffee, you get one for water. As your coffee is brewing, you're putting the water in your cup and you're drinking it. Even if you just have a few sips of water before your first coffee, that is a micro movement to putting your body's needs first in that moment. Is it going to make a world of difference in your day? Probably not. However, it is a very intentional step to taking care of yourself. Maybe it is setting a timer in your phone so that you are aware when 3 hours or 4 hours have passed, and it's like, hey, gentle reminder, have something to eat. Maybe that means you've got a little bit of a snack that's easy to grab, but you just have that 3 to 4 hour timer that tells you and reminds you, so that you're not having to make that decision when you're feeling so disconnected from your body. Another micro movement might be a 5-minute walk between meetings. You know that you're going to be in the same room for the next meeting, and you say, you know what, I'm going to jump up right now and I'm going to go for a walk in between. Maybe to remind yourself, again, because you feel like you're offline, you need to have, again, a reminder in your agenda, in your phone, in your calendar somewhere, that this is what I want to do. The thing is, when we start doing these micro movements, it is so difficult sometimes to muster that motivation, because we're feeling some sort of way in that moment. We're feeling tired, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're just feeling, disappointed in ourselves, that lack of motivation makes it really hard to push over the edge, even to do something as small as going for a 5-minute walk. However, if you pre-plan and say, I want to do this micro movement this week, then you can plan for that, and you can try to find ways to get out of your own way in that moment. Maybe another micro movement might be pausing to breathe before grabbing food at night. I'll give you my scenario. We have our dinner, lovely dinner, satiating, yummy. I eat until I'm satisfied and I'm not hungry anymore. And it's a really comfortable thing. And I've been really working on listening to my body in this sense. And then we take the kids up to bed. I will say we've done lots of micro movements as well with our bedtime routine with the kids, that I don't feel as emotionally drained and overwhelmed after. I feel like we've been sharing, my husband and I have been sharing the workload of that quite well. And so I've noticed massive changes in my food cravings after bedtime. But I do know that when I have that little mom's vacation time, 8 p.m. until I go to bed at like 9:30, 10, that is a time that may be a difficult time for me in terms of like cravings for different foods. If I set as a micro movement, once my daughter's asleep, because I'm on daughter duty, I'm going to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to walk down the stairs. I'm maybe going to, pour myself a new glass of water. And I'm going to sit down on the couch and I am going to drink some water and I'm going to take some breaths. Then I'm going to decide if I want to grab food. I am not in any way denying myself having that food. I am not saying I shouldn't do it or I'm going to try to not do it. I just want to be more connected with my body. I am very aware that part of my burnout is the repeated, routine of go all day, meeting other people's needs, not listening to myself, not having time for myself. And if I can just take that little moment to breathe, it helps me reconnect with my body and what I really need in that moment. Maybe a micro movement is starting to name what you're feeling. And I know a lot of people struggle with naming their emotions. It's not something that we've been socialized to do. But if even you start to like build that vocabulary a little bit, maybe that is the micro practice that you want to get into. As small as I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling tapped out. I'm feeling checked out. I have found it a real gift for me to be able to communicate to my husband, I'm feeling overstimulated. I recognize that when there's lots of noise, when there's lots of activity and I'm already tired, it makes me feel really overstimulated. And that really helps me to communicate, this is why I'm feeling irritable right now. It's not because anybody's done anything wrong or that I'm truly upset with anybody. My body is just overstimulated. I need to go take a 10-minute, I feel almost embarrassed to say this. I need to go take a 10-minute lay down and I just lay on my bed and I take some deep breaths and I relax and then I come back. Mama needs a timeout. So think about some of these things. There are scads of ideas for micro movements. And if you are curious about any that would work specifically for you, I very much encourage you, contact me on, reach out to me by DM on Instagram, Dr. Meredith, Dr.Meredith Mackenzie. I'd love to talk to you about those because this is a bit of an obsession for me right now because I really love making these small, very doable behavior changes that are going to help you feel more grounded. So why do these work and why am I so passionate about them is because they work to regulate your nervous system. You don't have a lot of control over how your nervous system reacts. That is something that is just baked into your wiring. And we seem to think that we should be able to. We seem to think we should be able to override and keep pushing through, keep going, but we're not robots. We are living, breathing human beings, and our nervous system is designed to tell us when we've done too much. And so when we start to engage in these micro movements, they really do help prevent that all or nothing pendulum swing. We start to find more balance because our bodies aren't going, whoa, that is way too much, and then slamming on the brakes because it's overwhelmed. They also give your brain the experience of success and safety, which is huge when you think about motivation and how you are assessing and evaluating yourself all the time. If I can do something like have a glass of water and then have a cup of coffee and be like, yeah, I did that. I was able to listen to my body. I was able to do a small act of self-care. I feel so much better about myself. I'm not saying that you then need to eat this elaborate day of perfectly portioned foods and macros and all that stuff. That is the stuff that gets overwhelming. And that is the stuff that feels restrictive. But I can water myself like a plant and have a little bit of water in the morning. And I feel pretty dang good and proud of myself for doing that. And even better, we start to access our hunger and fullness cues. Pretty much, I would say 70 to 90% of the clients that I work with come in saying, oh yeah, I don't know when I'm hungry or full. They are so out of touch with their hunger and fullness cues because they are at this point of burnout pretty much all the time. It's I'm either not eating or I'm eating too much. And I don't know how to find that middle ground because my body doesn't tell me anymore. And when we are able to do these little tiny micro movements that get us to be more in tune with our body, you will start listening to it more. It will start talking to you. You will be able to hear what your body is needing in that moment, and you'll have the brain capacity to be able to respond. Now, the almost fascinating thing that I have found is that the way we cope with stress in general often mirrors your style of eating. And so this is where my eating personality quiz comes in. So yes, burnout does affect your mood, but not only that, it will directly shift your eating patterns. And for most women that I work with, they don't even realize that they have a pattern until someone actually names it. So there are 4 eating personality types that I often see in my practice. It is in no way prescriptive, but it is just a tool. If you do the quiz, and I will give you the link to that, it is meredithmackenzie.ca/personality-quiz. meredithmackenzie.ca personality-quiz. You can take the quiz and you can see, and I will just explain a little bit about the different personalities now. But I do find it just so helpful as a recognition tool to be like, okay, so that is how my body is responding in those moments. And that is how it ends up affecting how I eat. And from there, we can kind of like reverse engineer and come up with different strategies for how to help you with that. If you take the quiz, you will see that you'll get information about your eating personality, and then also some tips and tools of what to do next. And then I will be in your inbox sharing more information with you as time goes on. So the different personality types are the unconscious eater. Lots of us are this person where we show up as feeling overwhelmed, depleted, totally checked out. And the way we're feeling is like it's so much that we need to just push those feelings away. We need to close them up in a tidy little box, and I cannot even deal with those right now. So we unconsciously eat because we're just not aware or tuned in at all to what's going on with our bodies in those moments. Another personality type is the careful, clean eater. So this often shows up when we're feeling really stressed through a sense of control or fear of losing control. So when you feel like things are out of your control, like things are a bit messy, overwhelming, that you feel like you're going to drop some of those balls at any moment, you double down and you get really controlling and you make sure that you're rigid about it. And, you're probably that person that always has a lot going on and you're managing it so well. I bet you get so many gold stars for how well you manage things. But you find that you really get really controlling with your eating as well, and you get more careful with your eating. Something super challenging and overwhelming during the holiday season when there's lots of different new scenarios with food and, celebrations with food where you're challenging that sense of needing to be careful with what you're eating. Another personality type is the professional dieter. And so this shows up when you're feeling behind or you're ashamed at this time of year. You're going to be more likely to fall into the trap of diet culture. You've done lots of diets in the past. You are a professional dieter. You know what works and you can kind of fall back on that. And it's a tricky time because you know that, I'm sorry, but I have an Aunt Sue and, Aunt Sue is going to say something about your body or her body or a diet she's on or something that it just feels like a safe place to return to feel like you've got your shiz together. Finally, the intuitive eater personality type. And this shows up when you are truly feeling connected and present and regulated in your body. And so what I want you to recognize from all this, besides the fact, like go take the quiz, learn more about yourself, recognize where you're getting stuck, is that when you can be attuned to your body, when you can like relax and finally, take it down a notch so that you're not expecting yourself to keep pushing, then your inner intuitive eater can come out. And only then, unfortunately. I wish that we could all achieve. Like, I think that would really please my soul in a really weird, unhealthy way. However, it's not the case. And even I'm working on that. So why is it even important to know your personality type when it comes to eating? First, it really helps you to see how your coping style shapes your eating. It also helps you understand how burnout affects your relationship with food. And I hope that this time of the year, with the holiday season and January just around the corner, I hope that it'll help you think of different ways that you can approach food without restriction. So take 2 minutes and go through the eating personality quiz. It's at meredithmackenzie.ca/personality-quiz. It will give you so much clarity on how the season impacts your eating patterns and what tiny shifts that you can actually take to help you feel more grounded. So I want to leave you with this. What if you gave yourself permission to end this year gently? I'm not saying throw in the towel and just give up, because that is more of the burnout response and the all or nothing pendulum swing. Instead, I'm saying, what if we just do this gently? What if we keep going on with the micro behaviors, the different micro movements that we had talked about? Come up with your own. Again, chat with me on Instagram. I'd love to talk to you about those. And you just kept moving with that, but gently. There's no big last hurrah, because your worth isn't measured by December productivity. There is no trophy at the end of this. There is no one that is going to say, you did it, way to go. And I want to encourage you to just take a moment for some reflection here. Write these down if you'd like. What would protecting my peace, mine, like actually me, look like for the next 3 weeks? Where can I take micro movements instead of forcing big changes? And what would it feel like to end the year with compassion instead of pressure? I hope those reflections are helpful for you. So again, the burnout that you're feeling right now is definitely not a personal failure. It's your biology, it's your human capacity, it's very normal. And if you want to understand what's actually happening with your eating this time of year, you can take my eating personality quiz. It'll help you name your pattern, understand your stress response, and get personalized suggestions on how to support yourself through the holidays and into the new year. You can find the link in the description below. And if the season feels heavy, I want you to remember you're not doing it wrong. You're tired, and that is absolutely allowed. And I will be back here next week with a new episode. Happy holidays.
That's it for today's episode of One Body to Love. I'm so grateful you chose to spend this time with me. These conversations around food and body image can be deeply personal, and the fact that you showed up today open and curious means more than I can say. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me on Instagram at Dr. Meredith Mackenzie. Send me a message, share what stood out, or just say hi. If you're ready to take the next step toward food freedom and finally feel at home in your body, head to meredithmackenzie.ca/OBTL to learn more about the One Body to Love program. You'll find everything you need to begin healing your relationship with food with support every step of the way. If you're enjoying the show, one of the best ways to show support is by leaving a quick rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. Your words help more women find this space and feel less alone. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You deserve a life of peace with food and your body.